Septic disclosures and permits. What are you even looking at? In this video, we're going to look at some actual permits. Don't worry, I've redacted everyone's information. But we're going to look over some septic permits and talk about what I see when I look at these. What are you looking for? Why would you even be looking at a septic permit in general? So let's dive in and get going. What's up? It's me, Haley Jones. I am a real estate agent in the Knoxville and East Tennessee area, and I read a lot of septic tanks because we have quite a bit of properties in the East Tennessee area that have a septic tank for their sewer. They are not on public sewer. They have a septic tank, which is an individual unit for the property. But also, I help clients buy and sell land. And sometimes land has a permit on file or there's no permit. You have to do a soil test. All of that. So if you're curious about soil testing, go check out those videos. I do have some videos on soil test versus perk test versus soil mapping. I should say soil map versus perk test, whatever. This is about reading septic permits. Now, some people do not care what the permit says or how many bedrooms it's rated for. Now, in general, a septic permit is going to tell you how many bedrooms the property is rated for, and it's going to also show you where the septic tank is. So, for example, we often see that a 3-bedroom home, not often, but we sometimes see a 3-bedroom home only has a 2-bedroom septic permit. Now, this isn't necessarily cause for alarm depending, because say it's a 3-bedroom home, but every bedroom on a permit assumes 2 adults. So that being said, that's one thing to consider. You also have to consider the size of the tank. It may be rated for a 2-bedroom property because of the field lines, not necessarily because of the size of the tank. So just bear that in mind. However, years ago, I had a listing. It had 8 bedrooms. I think, well, it for sure had 8 bathrooms. It had a lot of bedrooms. Huge house. However, the septic permit that was on file was for 2 bedrooms. Therefore, I could not list this property as an 8-bedroom home. It was listed as a 2-bed, 8-bath, because it had 8 bathrooms. And I had multiple agents be like, hey, I think you flipped the bedrooms and the bathrooms. I was like, no, it does have 8 bathrooms, but it's only septic rated for 2 bedrooms, okay? What's interesting about that house is only 2 people ever lived in it, but that's a whole other story. That being said, you might be alarmed if you're going to buy an 8-bedroom house, but the permit is only for 2 bedrooms. Don't necessarily take that as like, oh, this is a no-go, but I just want to point out to you that that's a thing that happens. You might see a 3-bedroom house rated for 1 bedroom. So a permit is going to tell you how many bedrooms it's rated for. Sometimes that might affect resale, depending on who the buyer is. Again, buyers don't care. So that's one thing that a septic permit tells you. How many bedrooms is this home rated for based on the septic system? The second thing that a permit's going to tell you is where is the septic tank and where are the field lines. Why does that matter? Well, if you want to put a pool in, and the septic area would be in the way of where you want to put the pool in, that's going to be a problem. If you want to add a driveway, if you want to put a concrete pad down, if you want to add a deck, but the permit or the septic system is in the way of those things, that's going to be a problem. You could do this. You could try to put a pool where your field lines are, but you're going to realize really quickly that is a very messy problem. So you're not going to do that. You're not going to be driving heavy machinery over field lines, over where your tank is. You could be, that'd be not very smart. So you want to know where the tank is and where the field lines are, the drain lines. So that's a couple things why it's important to know about the septic tank and about the septic permit. So let's finally do what I said we're going to do. And we're going to go over, I have multiple permits we're going to look at. I'm going to show you what I see when I read this, any important information that I want to point out that I think would be good for you to see as you're reading a septic permit. So let me share with you these documents. There's a bunch of them, okay? Here's example number 1. First of all, what we see is we look here, we see large diameter gravel nest pipe. This is a Sevier County example. Bedrooms 3. It says certificate of completion. So this is a completed septic system. This is not for new construction. The system is completed. It tells you the type of tank, how big it is, so that's 1,000 gallons, and it's telling you about the system itself, and it's saying 10-inch large diameter pipes, essentially. So what we have is the property line over here. This is the house. Now we can't see necessarily the orientation of the house, but what we're seeing is, here's the house, here's your tank, here is your line, like your sewage line out, and then these are your field lines. These guys, these dotted lines. So essentially is all the waste comes out of the house, boom, into the tank, and then it goes through this pipe, and then eventually it deteriorates through the field lines. So that's an example. Now, given that this is the property line and this is the street, we could guess that there's probably a driveway somewhere. We would hope that probably the driveway is over here. Maybe the driveway is going over there. They didn't necessarily care about that, but this is an example of what this permit is showing. So that's one example. Let's find another one. That was example 1. Let's go to example 2. There's no specific order to these, so if you're like, what's the order? It's not. Okay, so here is another one. Blount County, certificate of completion. So again, that's telling us that this is a done line. It's not under construction, which is gonna be obvious, okay? If the house is built already, it's gonna be obvious, okay? We again see the 1,000, we see this absorption rate 60 minutes per inch. You know, that's fine. I think 75 is the threshold, I believe. Once you get above 75, that's where it's a little bit like sketchy. Anyhow, okay, map not to scale. This is 330-foot field line. So this up here did not tell us how many bedrooms. So if we go down here, it says on the permit 3 bedrooms. We can see here's the driveway, here's the house. Again, we've got the tank, and then we've got the field lines. And this is actually, I guess these were a mistake, these X's. I don't know what the X's are. But look here. See how it says reserve? So if I'm looking at this property and I'm thinking, okay, well, I probably want to put a pool. If this is a front yard, you probably don't want to put a pool in the front yard, and your field lines take up a big chunk of the backyard. You cannot put a pool in this reserve area. Now, you would not be able to get a permit to put a pool anywhere back here, because here's your reserve area, which is what that's saying is the reserve area is in case these field lines fail, something happens, you have to redo them. This area over here is reserved in case something goes wrong. So that's what that's saying, which is fine. But again, if you're thinking, okay, we want to add a garage, we want to put a garage in the back, you wouldn't really be able to do that. So this might be reason for this house not to be an option depending on what you were trying to do. So that's example 2. Let's see example 3. I'm just going in order so I can remember what I did. Okay, example number 3. This is a Jefferson County example. Now notice the title up here says permit for construction. So this is them getting a permit to do this. And then what we're going to see, well, there's a permit and there's the completion. So here's the permit, it says this. And then this is the completion certificate. So once it was completed, right? So on the permit itself, you can see that they want to do 2 bedrooms. This is for installation. They're talking about the size of the tank, how many trenches, how many inches deep they're going to be. So you're putting it on that construction permit. You see the 75 absorption rate, soil typing by soil scientist says general, and then they put the absorption rate there. So that's all the information about the stuff itself. Now, notice that it says exact contour not established, run trenches on contour, allow 6 feet between trenches. So it's telling you essentially how to create this map, okay? And then down here, the person has drawn the map, and what we're seeing is, this one is interesting because I don't see property lines. This is kind of a little bit confusing. We can see here's the field lines, but then it says primary reserve area. So this to me is a little bit confusing, but because this was pre-construction, if we go and look at this other one, we can see a little bit more about the information about this. So we see the house is here, we see the tank, we see the field lines, and then we see the reserve area is behind. We also see the property lines. So this property kind of goes pretty far back, but again, this is another example where if this is the house and you wanted to put a pool, there's not really space for that because these property lines are a little bit hard to see because it's all like black on the black grid, but there's not a ton of room for that. So, and you can see that this is a 1,000-gallon tank, system approved for 2 bedrooms. So that's what that is telling us. Let's go check out the next one. Too late. Okay, now this is another Sevier County one. Now, here is an interesting one. So we see property lines here. This is the front of the house. We have 2 driveways, and we see that there's some space here, and then we have, again, reserve area. So you have some options of stuff you could do. Now, also, when you're thinking if you want to add a garage or add something, you want to make sure you could do that based on restrictions. But when it comes to looking at the layout of the land, you know, this area back here is in reserve. You could not put a pool back here, and you certainly could not put a pool here. Again, we see here's your tank, here's your field lines, and we see that this one is rated for 3 bedrooms. It says there, number of bedrooms. And again, this is a completed septic system, so this is the permit for that property. Number 5, this one has got a lot of notes. I pulled this one for a reason. So notice it says, again, you see 3 bedrooms here. This is a Blount County one. This is a completed one. It says conventional with a pump system. Okay, yeah, this is why. So here's the house, right? Here's the street to the front. Now, look at this. House, the tank is all the way back here. Now, why would that be? Well, it's possible that it's on some sort of elevation. So they're basically pumping this sewage back to this tank. So it says no proof of electrical inspection of pump and alarm has been presented. So this person is saying, okay, yeah, this system is rated for 3 bedrooms, but I didn't see that there's a permit for the electric back to this pump. It says check valve outside of pump, blah, blah, blah. You've got the tank, you've got a septic tank, a pump tank, and then another tank back here. And then you start seeing the field lines. So this is pumping, and this may not be an actual tank. I think this is like a catch-all, and then you start seeing these field lines. So if you were gonna do that, so it's possible, but again, this says 100% reserve area. So you can't put anything here. Again, so that's, I know I keep repeating myself, but that's the main thing is like, if you wanted to add something, you would have to do it to the front or side. And also, again, make sure that the restrictions or HOA allow for that. But you can see that it says conventional with pump system. So basically what's happening is the sewage is being pumped up to the field lines. So that's what that one is showing you. Number 6, this is another Sevier County one. We see this is a permit for construction. So this is not a completed. It says that right there at the top. They're asking for a 2-bedroom permit. And then here, this is the only one with a little color. But what we have is the house, the driveway, the tank, and then the field line system, which this to me looks like it would also maybe need a pump. But I mean, this is probably based on it asking for a 2. And you can see like the counties do this different. Like this is a fill in the blank for Jefferson. Sevier County has got like put the information in the actual table. It's asking you about the type. It does have a pump, and you are checking all the things that you would have. And so that's, now this also says this permit is valid for 3 years from date of issue. So because this is a construction permit, this person is trying to get a permit for what they're wanting to do. So what they've done is they've gotten the information that they need to do. They've had a soil scientist come and check it out. Notice it says soil typing by soil scientist 75. And then they have drawn what they want the system to be, how it's going to work. They've consulted with someone that could put this in and told them like, this is how the system would work. And they've gotten the permit to do this. However, this is for a piece of land because there's no home yet. There is no house. Changes to house and drive size and or location may void this permit. So that being said, if you are looking at a piece of land and there is a permit on file, but you don't like what that permit says, you can get a different permit. However, depending on the size of the property and the soil itself, you want to make sure you can do that because there may be only enough room for a 2-bedroom septic tank field lines, right? So if the land itself allows for a different configuration, then by all means, you could absolutely get a new permit. You do not have to use this permit. Again, this says changes to the house or drive size and or location may void this permit. So if you do something else, you build this, and then you have them come out. They're like, what is this 15-bedroom house? You might have some problems, okay? Anyways, so this is saying this permit is valid for 3 years from date of issue. And this is a Sevier County one, but you're gonna see that on a Knox County. You're gonna see on them all, now the newer ones, it's gonna say how long that permit is valid for. So that's for a new construction example. Okay, this one, again, I just wanted to show because you have this long 221-foot pump line. So you've got the tank, the pump tank, and then you've got the field lines way back here. Notice you don't see anything about reserve, so I think that's interesting. It looks like this is a huge piece of property. This says estimated absorption rate 75. This looks relatively old. Oh yeah, so this is from 2005. So now you see a bit more of information asked, but this is a completed permit. They're saying it's fine. It's been signed off on. So you just see that you probably have some room here that you could do if you wanted to do anything. But this is telling you like, yeah, you're pumping everything way back behind the house. So that is an example of that again. Another one where the reserve area is directly behind. So you can see here's the tank, here's the field lines. Now, why are people putting these? Well, because this is 30 feet, this is 26 feet. So if you wanted to add a deck or something, like, you could do that there, but you certainly don't want to put it over here, way back on top of that. Or if you're going to add a fire pit or whatever, some sort of structure, if you want to add concrete for additional driveway, like, you got to be very careful about what that looks like. And so that's why you're seeing these measurements. And this is also helping you know exactly where to find the tank, but also where are the field lines. So that is a helpful permit, in my opinion. That was a completion, done one. You see, here's your absorption rate, 3-bedroom rated, pretty straightforward. Let's see. So this is a 3-bedroom. This is a permit for construction, so it's not yet constructed. We have our soil absorption rate. And then, oh, I think I wanted to show you again just this. So this is from our more recent one. This is Knox County from 2024. So this is good through May of 2027. You can see that here. It says this permit is valid for 3 years from date of issue. Now, they did not make a note that said, you know, if there's an adjustment to this, it does not apply, etc. I'm sure it's probably in a disclosure somewhere here, but this is interesting as well because they kind of had the elevation, and you can see you've got this front of house, you've got, here's your tank, here's your field lines, and you've got this reserve area as well. So that being said, that's just kind of, you know, another one to consider and look at. You see the road coming through here. So it looks like this is quite steep here based on these lines, and you got your property lines to the back. So this is a nice big piece of property, it looks like. But that being said, again, this is for one that's not yet constructed. And then they are on this one requesting a 3-bedroom. So that's what they've asked for. So that's the standing permit for that property. So yeah, that is a look at septic permits. Now, something that you might see that you may feel like this is super alarming, that would be this. So when I get a listing that has a septic permit, I go and send this file search application to Knox County. Now, some counties, you can go and their septic permits, you can type in the information and you can pull up the septic permit. Others, you have got to request that information. So this is an example for Knox County. And if you scroll down, so normally, like on a listing, you're going to sign, if a property has a septic tank, you're going to sign the subsurface sewage disposal system permit disclosure. The SSDS is what we say, but subsurface sewage disposal system permit disclosure. Disclosure means somebody's telling you something. Okay, well, what's on here? It says, the owner of this residential property discloses the following. According to the subsurface sewer, blah, 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 blah. So according to this piece of information, which if we look at this piece of information, so I fill out this application, I send it to the county, and they complete the bottom where it says for office use only. So I send in this form and look at what's checked. No record of sewage system construction or approval could be found. Now, let's say that there was a permit on file, and they check this date of issue for a 3-bedroom system, certificate of completion. So that's if it was done, yes, no, and then the number of bedrooms. So it will tell you that. Now, that being said, and hopefully if there's a permit on file, then you can just look at the permit and see that it says the number of bedrooms and they should match. But in this case, it says no record of sewage system construction or approval could be found, which means on the disclosure that a seller is going to give you, it's going to say the file could not be located. Now, the other option is a permit was not issued for this property. Well, I mean, it could be that the file could not be located, could also be there was no permit ever issued for the property. Now, why would that happen? It depends. But if we look back at this, we notice that this house was constructed in 1899. So it's doubtful that, number one, they would keep files that long, but number two, they were even giving septic permits in 1899. I don't know. I wasn't around then. My own home, where I'm recording this in my home office, was built in 1899, and it wasn't even built with a septic, which was retroactively added. I mean, it had an outhouse, okay? There wasn't like plumbing. So that being said, there is no permit on file. This house is too dang old. But if there were a permit on file and it was a septic number of bedrooms, it will say rated for 3 bedrooms, for 2 bedrooms, for 5 bedrooms, whatever. And then you sign. So the buyer and the seller sign. So this is what that disclosure is telling you. This is not the permit. The permit are all those different ones we just looked at. So anyways, when it comes to finding out information about septic permits and disclosures, that's what it all means. I hope this has been helpful. Obviously, please give me a shout. Ask your agent to help you. If you need an agent, obviously, I would love to help you, whether you're buying or selling in the Knoxville and East Tennessee area. So I'm Haley Jones. Please click subscribe because I really like to make this content and I really like to share this stuff with you. So I hope you want me to share it with you. So anyways, I hope you have a good day and I'll see you on the next video.